we start, we have a lot of older faces, new faces. Deb, I didn't say who. I could include myself in there, come on. But it's nice to see everybody. It's nice to see everybody in person. How many people feel that in person is important to them and should continue at some level for this organization? How many feel they would prefer to see only Zoom and no in person? And obviously I'm preaching to the choir because you came here today for a reason. The board has been talking about this for the past year, and the reason I'm interested in that information is, and also the information from your peers who say, no, we don't want to come in person, we would prefer not to be in person, is because we're going to be making the calendar for next year. And as we meet as a board over the summer and plan, I think it's important that we understand the needs of the membership. And I think that's really important for us as a board to really meet those needs. We haven't done the best job as a board this year in doing remote Zoom meetings, other than the in-person meetings. And I'm just going to be direct about that. And that has nothing to do with a lack of desire. It has to do with just lack of ability for everyone who's on the board to be able to make it happen with their own jobs. It doesn't mean we're not interested in pursuing it. We will continue to pursue that. And I'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. Can we go around the room, introduce ourselves? If you are willing, say roughly how long you've been in the business manager field. If you're new and you don't mind saying that you're new, I think that's important because we have a lot of new faces in the past year or two. We have a lot of new faces in the past month or two in the room. And I think it's important that those folks who are new get support that they need from us as an organization and from those who may be not as old yet, but more veteran. How's that? So I'm Colin Walsh. I'm president of MeASBO. I work for RSU 57, which is in the towns of Alfred, Limerick, Lyman, Newfield, Shapley, and Waterboro. So if we can just start over here, if you don't mind.
Stand up.
Yep.
Hi, I am Jennifer Fuller. I am the new business manager at MeASBO 58. That's Phillips, Kingsfield, Avon, and Strong. I've been on the job for, this is my 5th day. Oh, wow!
I'm a new business manager as well.
We'll go through a couple of things just quickly on my update so we can get to committee reports and approvals. Do you want to introduce yourself, Alice?
Sure.
Since
Good morning.
I was going to call you out on the back as I saw you back there, and I'm like, no, I'll wait.
I don't mind, thank you. I'm Alice Cobb. I'm with the Gorham Schools. So we were doing a little bit about ourselves.
Yeah,
is that what I understand?
that's what we were doing.
So this is my 24th year as a school business manager, or in a similar role, I guess. I started in Gorham when I was 19 years old as an accounting assistant and just loved the work. It interested me. I wanted to learn everything I could learn about it. So I did that, and still there today. So a little bit about me.
Thank you. Upcoming things just to keep in mind. We will be having an April meeting. More than likely that April meeting will get announced in the next week or so. Do you need me to not walk around? Because we're recording and she's trying to get this so we can post it later, and I think I need to stand still instead of wander. That's the only room I have is that, right? Okay. So we will announce that. That is more than likely going to be in Bangor because we haven't been to Bangor this year. So for folks to just keep an eye out on that, and we certainly want to help support our more northern folks as well. The board will be having an annual meeting between now and the end of the school year. We will be posting that as well. That will be a Zoom meeting in which we conduct annual business, election of officers. So if anyone is interested in serving on the board, anyone is interested in becoming an officer, please let us know. Please email us, and we will develop that list and make sure that that's included as part of the annual meeting and be in touch with you about how that process works. Tri-State Committee will report out, but Tri-State is May 17th to 19th in Burlington, Vermont. And I'll let Hollis talk about the importance of Tri-State here under committee reports. And then the last thing I'm going to say is, under my report is we are posting a position for a part-time executive director of the organization next week. If you know folks who are former business managers or someone who fits that role and wants to apply to be the part-time executive director, watch out for that information. That will be getting posted soon as well. Having gone through that, I want to leave time for committee reports. Minutes of November 4th were sent out. Is there a motion to approve those minutes? Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you. Is there any discussion about the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor? All opposed? That motion carries. The minutes are approved. The treasurer's report was sent out by Sherry as part of the agenda and package as well. Is there a motion to approve the treasurer's report? Thank you, Don. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the treasurer's report? Seeing none, all in favor? All opposed? That motion carries and the treasurer's report is accepted. We'll go through committee reports. Let me start with you, Hollis, on Tri-State.
That was my coming late.
Yep.
Right?
It does.
Thank you. So Tri-State this year is in Burlington, Vermont. It is May 17th, 18th, and 19th. And if you haven't been before, I'd really encourage you to attend. It really is a fantastic opportunity, not only to learn, but to network, get to know each other, and just refresh, because we don't have a reset period in our jobs where we take 6 weeks off or time off to kind of reflect and plan. And this really gives us an opportunity to learn, but also kind of reset. And I find it incredibly helpful. We've tried to make the professional development sessions really meaningful. And so we have a variety of sessions. We have some work on DEI. We have state-based work built in. We have professional development for technology, finance, and legal tracks. So I think we've done a great job in putting the program together. We've also set aside some time for dinner at the Shelburne Museum, which is lovely. If you've been to the Burlington location before, you'll probably remember that. It's a really nice environment. We also have our banquet Thursday night, followed by just some free time to explore Burlington on your own. So we'd love to see as many people there as possible. Anybody have any questions? Right? Oh,
Just
yeah.
a reminder for all the new people here, we have a scholarship.
We do. There are a couple of scholarships that are, for this group in particular, you're talking about the Doug Brown. I'm not sure what this scholarship is that we do, so I'll have you talk about that afterwards if you can. But to your point, Bridget, there are a couple of scholarships that are also given at the conference. And one is provided for from the Doug Brown Scholarship, and it's for students who are going to pursue some post-secondary learning in business. That's awarded every year, and then Siemens also gives a scholarship as well, one to each state, $750 for a student who is kind of pursuing the STEM opportunities afterwards. So there are some other benefits of going as well, but I'll let Colin talk about
How do they
this.
register?
I was talking
How do they
about-
register?
For the new people to help towards the cost.
Yeah, I'll talk about that.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I've missed a few Tri-State meetings this year, so I'm winging it right now. I'm just totally flying
fill
by
in
the
with
seat
you.
of my pants. Thank you. You can register online if you go to the tristateaspo.org. You'll see all of the links that you need to register. We are doing it a little bit differently this year, where when you register, you're going to pay for everything all at once. So it's not just the professional development that you register for, and then we used to do separately that you would register for your meals and your accommodations. And now, when you register, there's your registration fee and your meals, and then you'll do your hotel separately. So that is a change if you've gone in previous years. That is a change to how we're doing it this year. I guess a lot has changed in the hospitality industry during the last couple of years, and we've been asked to make some changes that way. So.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Kelly, anything you want to add for Tri-State to that? That there are scholarship opportunities for registration fees through MeASBO. So we will send out more information on that, so watch out for that, especially if you're a new business manager and you're not aware of that. We have opportunities for that. The other thing I would say is, for those of you who don't know, Tri-State is Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont. Those are the 3 states in Tri-State. We are typically the least attended state out of the 3, and I'd really like to not be the least attended, and I think it's a great opportunity. Next year, it's in May of every year. Next year, in May of 2024, it will be in Portland. So we are going to need help from this organization and its membership in helping to put that on, because that is organized by the state in which it's hosted. So there is help from the Tri-State Committee, which is membership of all 3 states. But as far as chairing it, organizing it, hotel, and all of that, it requires a lot of work from the host state. So we really need help. So be prepared for that, because as we enter August and September, we're going to be reaching out and asking for help. If you're interested, reach out to us now. Let us know that you want to help be part of that effort. I'm going to move to legislative. Stacy, do you want to come up and talk on legislative? As she's doing that, unfortunately, Commissioner Macon had an emergency today. She is not going to be able to be here, but we do have representatives from the Commissioner's office who are going to be here. So I just wanted to let you know that, and we'll talk more about that when we get to that agenda item.
Do I have to hold it?
Yep, you do.
Okay, I got to hold my paper too, though. Good morning. Zach and I looked at 4 pages of LDs that are proposed, and we picked our top 10 that we thought impacted us in some way. The first one we looked at was an act to require anti-pinch sensors on school bus doors. Not sure if you have those on your doors now. Don't know what the cost will be. Another one was an act to ensure safe access to schools by implementing interlocking door control technology. I know in my central office you go through a door and then you're in a vestibule and then you have to go through another door. I don't know what that will mean for schools that only have one door coming in as far as the interlocking door systems. The next one was an act to revise school funding formula. There wasn't a lot on that. When I clicked the link, it said that it was in concept, so there was no draft yet to see any details. The next one was 301, an act to exempt employers from providing earned paid leave for certain employees. I know I'm having trouble with the earned time off. I'm sure you are as well. When I looked at the detail of that, the exemption was for substitute teachers, part-time employees, and coaches. That's not helping with bus drivers who want time off. We need our bus drivers driving every day. We're struggling to find ed techs. We were hoping it would apply to them as well. The next one was an act to allow education funding to follow the student. I know that would cause problems for some places. I don't know if that means charter schools or private schools. That would certainly have an impact on us. Another one, 381, an act to increase school bus safety by requiring monitors. We can't get ed techs or food service workers. Not sure where we're going to find monitors. 385, resolve directing the Department of Education to examine alternate metrics for determining the disadvantaged student factor in the school funding formula. I'm sure that has to do with the free and reduced lunch applications, so we'd be very interested to see what that one does. We certainly need that. 386, an act to assist schools with heating and transportation fuel costs during the school year. 733 was an act to require an annual itemized statement of benefits for public employees and retirees. When I clicked that link, it talked about a statement that would be required to send each employee in January, same time W-2s are due, about their wages, the health insurance that's provided to them, any compensated leaves such as vacation time, holiday pay, and sick leave. That would begin in January 1st, 2024. And it had to mention the total employer contribution to funds appropriated by the legislature to the retirement system, as well as employer contributions from funds appropriated by the legislature to the applicable health insurance plans. It talks about also a dashboard has to be created for people to go and look at that. I don't know about you, I have in my business office me, a payroll person, and an AP person. We're maxed out. So to put this in on top of W-2s time and 1095Cs, I don't know how that's gonna go. Hopefully it doesn't go anywhere. The last one we looked at was 738, an act to establish a paid family and medical leave system. Most of my employees have paid time off. You know, FMLA is not paid unless you have provisions in your contract. We have all kinds of paid time off. I have maybe run into this once or twice in my years in the business where somebody was new, didn't have sick time on the books, and didn't have any paid leave. So I'm not sure that would affect me a whole lot. I don't know if it would affect you, but it may affect other businesses. So those are what we looked at. I think Zach was providing a documentation to put on our website, so you could go to these and look at any of the other links that you wanted to look at. Thank you. Yes. The annualized statement, that was 733. You're welcome.
Other questions for Stacy? I would say that Stacy and Zach have done a great job and with the limited resources and time they have. Certainly would encourage anyone who has an initiative and desire to want to join them. They probably could use one or two more people on that committee that has a passion to follow legislation, see what's happening and stay abreast of what's going on there. So if someone has an interest in that, Stacy's in the back row, see her at break, let her know you have an interest in that. The other area we could use a little help, because she is a team of one, is technology. I think you're by yourself, right?
Oh,
Yeah. So anyone who has an interest, that can be done remotely. Really just working on updating the website, getting information, and really being more out in front on those types of things would be helpful. Any questions or items that you want to bring up in regards to anything that's been said? Yeah.
On the exempt EPL, what about the LED instructors that come in once, like, I don't know, like come in once a week for like 3 course?
So the question for being recorded is, what about other kind of intermittent workers such as adult ed? And that would be considered temporary, was Stacy's response to that. So any other questions or items? At this point, I'm going to turn it over to Chris Whitaker. Canon Solutions America is the breakfast sponsor for this morning. Give them an opportunity to talk a little bit about what Canon does, so that you have information from them, and we do thank them for sponsoring breakfast today. I know there are other vendors here. I know I've talked to some of you. We do rotate through a vendor listing of who wants to be a breakfast sponsor, and we kind of do that on a continuous basis so that we are representing all of our vendors fairly and equitably. So right now it's Canon's turn, so thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks, Colin. Again, my name is Chris Whitaker. I'm with Canon Solutions America. I've been with Canon over 20 years. I see a lot of familiar faces, which I haven't seen in a while, and new faces, which I'd like to get to know you more. Please keep Canon in mind for copiers, MFPs, A3, A4 devices, printers, and also solutions. We do sell solutions. I'm based out of Portland, Maine. I do work hybrid. I live in Freiburg. I've lived in Freiburg all my life, except for 5 years, and we have a ton of snow in Freiburg right now. But I guess what I want to say is Canon is a strong company, and we survived the pandemic. Throughout the pandemic, our service people still worked. Okay, we're still servicing copiers, printers. 2020, 2021 were tough years. But financially, Canon is a strong company. As of the end of 2022, our numbers were back to where they were 2019. So I used to have a lot of schools in Maine. I don't anymore. We have a lot of schools in New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and Vermont. It's not all about price. It's about the solution. It's about account management. I don't lose accounts. I have a lot of large accounts. I've been doing this for 20 years. State of Maine is one of my accounts. University of Maine, Chimbro, large accounts, Del Hayes or Hannaford Brothers, along with school districts, along with other colleges. And we've got a great product. Some of the things, I want to make this informal too, so please feel free to interrupt me. Some of the things that we're doing at school districts now that as business managers you might have not thought about, instead of replacing the whole fleet of 30 units or 60 units, whatever, do it in phases. Seem to work out well with some of the school districts. Other things that we do is we're selling refurbished or certified pre-owned, however you want to put it. These machines last for many, many miles, okay? Many clicks, over 1 million clicks. Technology's huge today. I have a question for you. Does everyone know when I say A3 or A4? Who can tell me what that means? Okay. An A3 machine will print or copy up to 11 by 17. An A4 machine will only go up to 8.5 by 14. So the A4 machines are less expensive. So if you're not printing 11 by 17, you might want to look at an A4 machine. Just something to know. I'm going to turn it over to my solution analysis, Dave Brullo. Another thing, Dave is very important because once we put our machines in, he comes in and puts card readers and software on the devices, so you can send a print job to a copier at the high school and say you had a meeting at the business office, you forgot your print job, just go to the business office, copier, and release that job. And so, Dave Rullo.
Thanks, Chris. In the 5 years that he wasn't at Freiburg, he was in Arizona, so nice warm weather, which is obviously not what we're dealing with now. Thanks, Chris. Like Chris said, I'm the solutions analyst for the region. I've been with Canon 30 years. This is my 30th year right now. I've seen a lot of different things come and go. I've done a lot of networking, software, you name it, we've done it. It's a critical time in a lot of industries, especially the education industry, for digital transformation. If you haven't heard of it, you probably will very soon. It's where the clicks that Chris was talking about from a copier standpoint get drastically reduced because a lot of the information is now done and transmitted electronically. And we support and we have a lot of solutions that assist industries like the education industry in exactly that, doing indexing of documents, scanning documents, hybrid environments, working from home, working from, you name it, we can help you out with it. People were mentioning training earlier and having training available to people, helping people out, as Colin was saying earlier. We try and do a lot of that. We learn from you folks on a daily basis on what's new, what's trending, what needs do you folks have. Chris and myself are always open to meeting with people, especially you folks here in the room, to discuss opportunities, to discuss issues that you may be having, workflow issues, whatever it may be. We're here to help and try and assist in whatever way we can. And we appreciate it. Like we've got 50 years in the industry just between the two of us. We love learning as well from you folks and finding other opportunities in which ways we can help. So thank you very much for your time today.
I also want to end this with Scott and Deb over here. I can remember I started with MeASBO selling computers probably 30 years ago. And those two folks were on the committee at that time, so I feel really old. I'm so sorry. Thanks, everyone. Keep us involved in the RFPs. Any questions for me or for Dave? Sherry.
What are your service availabilities in the state of Maine?
We do the whole state of Maine, Bangor South, and also East. North, we work with a dealer up there, Office Max, and so we can go all the way to Fort Kent. But it's usually Bangor South, and I have 2 to 3 technicians in Bangor, at least 3 technicians in Augusta, Southern Maine, 5 maybe. So we're pretty close to you. I mean, I have a technician actually that lives over in Conway. So, good question.
I guess I might add, we go through Office Max here.
Yeah.
And we've had an integrated system probably this is our 3rd year now. Absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, Rick's great up there.
One of the features that you mentioned was that we can be in any building, and it doesn't matter, we can tap into that, enter our code into that machine and pull up whatever job we're covering. And it gives us all, for our office, it gives us all kinds of information, we know who's copying what, who's doing what, and we can monitor.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah, Rick's good up there. Rick used to, University of Maine Presque Isle in Fort Kent is my account, and he serviced that whole area for us. And that brings up a good question, though. How are you folks doing meter reads and placing service calls, and do you have auto toner turned on and all that stuff? I mean, you can do all that stuff online today, and you can monitor it, or we can send you toner automatically. Are most of you doing that today with your copiers? Yeah, okay. Any other questions? Come see me at the breakout, I'll give you one of my cards. I didn't want to do a PowerPoint today, just wanted to make it really informal, but nice to see that you have all these people at this meeting. Thanks again, Colin, for letting us sponsor.
Thank you, Dave and Chris. We appreciate all our vendors. Vendors are important. We specifically ask our vendors and have communication with our vendors that if they attend, they're not hard selling. They are not allowed to approach you and sell to you at these meetings. They are here to provide a resource for you and them to network, learn, be educated. If that opportunity is something you're interested in, certainly see these vendors at the break. They introduce themselves during the introduction period. Reach out to them. That's why they're here. They want to help you. They want to learn. You want to learn from them and see if it's an opportunity that works for you. So we appreciate all of our vendors who are here today as well. Any other items before we get into the business manager discussion? So the past 48 hours have been kind of interesting for us. Andrea has been my right hand as VP, and we've been kind of on the fly because everything has changed about this agenda in the past 48 hours from when it was sent out. So bear with us as we go through this, because the people we were going to have do the roundtable discussion weren't able to do it. So we have some volunteers who have stepped up, and we appreciate that. So who? Adam, I think, said he would help me. So thank you, Adam. He was coerced, yes, because this is what happens. When you go to Tri-State, you get talked into stuff by Colin, and Adam got talked into stuff. I cannot say whether it was after hours or not, let's put it that way. So Andrea, who did we have? We had Mark Bouchard, Adam. Who else did I ask? I asked someone else, Kelly. Yes, thank you. Come on up.
When I walked in.
Come on up. Yes, when you walked in, because we were going on the fly this morning. So here is your member opportunity chance. I was going to ask a brand new business manager to step in this morning because Max Black was going to do the new business manager fill in, but he had a family emergency, so he couldn't be here. So unfortunately, I didn't feel it was fair to take one of the people who've been employed by a school district for 6 days and say, hey, in 10 minutes, can you sit on this panel and talk to people? I'm going to let you guys pass this thing around. Hopefully it works, and hopefully we don't get feedback.
Hello, is this on? Hello, is this on?
Start singing. See if that helps.
There are limits, huh?
So these folks are probably, they're all very experienced. So this is your opportunity. I have a bunch of questions I can ask, but I would rather you ask the questions. What is it that you struggle with in your office? And I know the first thing you're going to say is EPL. So they'll talk about EPL, but are there other things other than EPL that you struggle with? Is it main PERS? Is it the new food service reporting and how that is structured? What is it that is bugging you as a business manager or your staff that you need answers to? Let's start with that before we do canned questions. Go for it.
It came up this week for any payroll, is hourly employees and stipends, and having hourly employees need coaches. And especially when they're, like, the coaching contract is supposed to be like, say, this number like $5,000, but you had snowstorms and everything else, they didn't get that $5,000. They've been here for years. And then when you tell them, well, you need to track your hours, well, that's not how I've always done it. Drives me absolutely insane.
So I'm going to repeat the question for video, and then I'll let you guys answer. So the question, I'm going to paraphrase, tell me if I get it wrong, is for stipend positions, trying to track hours, trying to accommodate certain things like snow days and other things where there's a change in stipend. How do you manage that? Is that fair? Okay. You guys are on. Don't stare at each other. Someone step up on this, come on.
Yeah, sure. So I'll just talk about how we handle it in Brunswick. Our hourly our stipends are broke down by an overall amount. And how we do it is we actually, when you have to fill out a time card, obviously, and you turn in a time card, we actually pay them at minimum wage for their stipend hours. And we have this whole table and formula set up in a spreadsheet for the person that's tracking the amount paid to the person. We calculate the weighted overtime based upon their actual wage per hour, how many hours they worked in their own position, how many hours they worked in the stipend position. And then at the end of the stipend period, whatever they have not been paid in the stipend line, because they have a lump sum contract, actually gets paid out in that final payment. So that's how we handle it in Brunswick. They are required to fill out a separate time card from their regular time card, so they turn in two, and it's paid bi-weekly with their pay, with a final payout.
Mark and Adam?
Exactly. I'm the business manager. My district doesn't trust me with payroll, so I actually have somebody that does all that for me.
Adam?
I'll just agree that what Kelly said is very good and exactly how you should do it. And on camera, I will not answer what we do. Let me just say I aspire to be like that.
And if you want me to share the template that we utilize, I'd be willing to do that as well. So.
Thank you. The other part of that, I think, is also look at how you write your stipend contracts. If you don't have a stipend contract, that's one thing. If you have a stipend contract, how is that written? What is the agreement between the district and, let's say, a coach in this example, for how they're going to get paid, the minimum or maximum number of hours they can work? You can protect yourself in a lot of ways by also including that or excluding that, as appropriate, in the contract itself as well. Because the first thing that's going to get asked for in a potential case is, or Department of Labor is, what's the contract say? What did the two parties agree to in writing? And I think that's often overlooked because it's just, we took last year's and we inserted names and amounts, right? So I would suggest we look at those very carefully. Sometimes, probably every 2 or 3 years, we throw it to Drummond and say, hey, is there any change that we really should put in here from a labor standpoint? So Drummond's labor department, and say, how do we improve upon what we currently have for an agreement? Hopefully that gives you some thoughts. Stacy. I'm sorry. Sherry. I was looking at Stacy and I said Sherry.
And just for further clarification, you're doing this just for your hourly staff, so your teachers who are salaried, you don't need to keep track of it, correct?
That is correct. They just get in our district, they have a choice to have it spread bi-weekly or halfway through the season and at the end.
So that's a good point. The question was, are you just talking about hourly people at this point and not teacher stipends? I will say, in that same vein, we at 57 write the contract for teacher stipends in a way so that they cannot come back and say that they worked 1,500 hours for a $2,000 stipend and weren't paid minimum wage for that stipend. And they're agreeing to that when they do it under the teacher side or salaried person side, let's put it that way. Questions? New folks have tons of questions, I know you do. You got people in front of you, go.
We have an interesting situation in Old Orchard because we do have hourly employees and we require them to fill out a timesheet, but some of these employees might work there, so they work there, they might be an ed tech. So I'll use an ed tech for example. They get their hourly rate. When they do their stipend, they get the minimum wage. Then they might go to the football field and move chains, all right, move the chains, and that's a $15 an hour rate. So we have to end up using a blended rate for overtime. And we have a template that we use and it calculates it all out because we can't determine where was this person when they, it's too difficult if they have 4 timesheets to try to determine where the overtime went because part of it might be overtime in this one and then this one, right? You understand what I'm saying? It's just too difficult. So we do a blended rate for overtime.
So I think the comment was that for folks who are in multiple positions within a week, doing different pay stipends and then are hourly on top of that, there's a blended rate calculation. We do the same. I'm assuming you folks do the same as well. And it does become sometimes a pain because, for example, we have a full-time year-round secretary who does a ton of things for athletics. She will do scorekeeping. She'll do anything. Whatever is needed, she will fill in, and those have different rates. And I'm kind of like Mark. I have a payroll department, and they do all those calculations, and then they come in and tell me how frustrating that can be at times. And it is, and I get it. It is. Other items? Yep, go ahead.
Explain what qualifies someone as an exempt salaried employee, and as business managers, do you fall into that category?
So the question was, who falls into an exempt salaried position, and do business managers fall into that?
So that would be governed by the Department of Labor. They have standards for what can qualify you for exempt. I believe there are 3 tests, and you'd need to go down through, there's a nice PDF on their website. If you Google that, you can find it easily. It'll walk you through the 3 tests that will tell you whether, and you should apply someone's job description to the 3 tests and see if they meet those standards. And if they do not, then they would need to be classified as non-exempt. You would need to track them hourly with a timesheet. But I would guess that most business manager positions do qualify as exempt, would meet the administrative standard.
And I think that's kind of you really have to look at the facts and circumstances of the employees you're talking about in your scenario, their job responsibilities, what they're doing. Because a particular person in Adam's district versus my district may have different roles, different responsibilities, different level of authority to make decisions. And depending on all of those roles in the checklist that DOL has, will help guide you as to whether they're exempt or non-exempt.
Colin, maybe we could send that out to the ASBO list.
Mm-hmm.
We could get that from if someone
Yep.
can grab that from DOL and just share it with everyone.
Dawn, can you just make a note for me? And we'll get that put together. Does anyone want to talk about earned paid leave, or would we rather just not and ignore it? Let's talk about it. Let's just face it. Because I don't want to run out of time and not have time to talk about it either. Think about your questions while we're talking about EPL. Who wants to start with this one? Does anyone in this room have software that is currently calculating EPL? And software does not mean Excel, but an automated system that is calculating EPL.
We utilize our time clock and we set up the accrual, so it's based on the clock in hours, it automatically calculates their earned EPL. That only applies to our positions that don't already earn some kind of paid leave, but it calculates automatically.
And what is the time clock system?
Time clock plus.
Time clock plus. So using an accrual within time clock plus in order to track that, which I'm assuming works for hourly who are punching,
Yes.
but not for salaried and others.
Yeah. We have an Excel sheet with those things.
And then obviously CBAs can be all over the gamut, or MOUs can be all over the gamut as to what has been negotiated or agreed upon, depending on whether it's a CBA or an MOU, as to what the agreement is between the district and the parties who are covered as to how earned paid leave is going to work.
When earned paid leave first came out, we worked with Drummond Woodson, and I started a lawyer, and then last year we negotiated with the teachers, which was the first time since EPL went into place, and we worked with a different lawyer at Drummond Woodson, and we have two totally different processes.
So Sherry's saying that just implemented with one particular union because it was the first time since EPL negotiated something. What was negotiated in a different agreement was very different than what this one is. Do other people have that situation where there's multiple different ways depending on whether it's hourly or a collective bargaining agreement that they're treated differently? How many folks have something that is not universal throughout the whole district that is different? So very few. Most of you have one set of rules for the entire district, regardless of whether it's teachers, ed techs, admin, or hourly. Is that what I'm hearing? Yep.
We actually had just settled our negotiated agreement before EPL took place, and it was a 3-year agreement. So now we're negotiating again, and this is the first time we've actually had EPL in our negotiated agreement. And the latest advice from Drummond was to keep the 3 days of personal leave in our current agreement and allow them to use 2 more days out of their earned paid sick time as needed for emergencies if necessary. And that was the latest advice that we just got. I don't know what other advice people get from Drummond Woodson, but I did see that several contracts in our area have that same exact language.
Thank you.
So basically, the sick time and the personal time run concurrently with the EPL till it's
Yep.
all used up.
So the comments were EPL, some agreements are running concurrently, are running sick time and personal leave concurrently at the same time when it's used. My question to that is, and we have one of those that works that same way as well, how are you tracking that? How are you tracking that Colin has utilized 38 hours, now asks for 4 hours of earned paid leave, but is only entitled to 40, and if you have within your policies and procedures that after EPL is used, you're using half day or full day, who and how are you tracking that? Deb?
At MSMA, we use the divisions, we have what's called a specified use category, so we have earned paid leave and other non-EPL, and we instruct our employees for the first 40 hours of vacation, sick or personal, after July 1, to use the specified category earned paid leave, and then our payroll person lets them know when they hit 40 hours, and then they do other for the rest of the year until June, and then start over again.
And we do something similar to that as far as tracking it and saying, yes, use a specific category. I'm gonna let you guys talk. We do the same. What I have found, at least in my shop, is that may work 30% of the time. The other 70% of the time, oh, yeah, I punched the wrong category. I didn't mean to. Oh, I didn't realize I was that close to being out. Oh, I didn't really know. I think there's a lot of we're a fairly large district. There's a lot of that's going on, and then there's corrections of that, so, yes.
What we did when we negotiated last year and the year before, support staff and then professional staff, is we actually reduced their sick time by 2 days and added those to the personal days, so their personal is now EPL and they get 5. And then at the end of the year, if they have any left, they can convert it back to sick time because they can't roll it over. So instead, we have to shift it back to sick time.
Did everyone hear that okay? So in one of our collective bargaining agreements, we do exactly that. We have agreed that we are taking 3 days of sick, 2 personal days, and we are literally extracting it on September 1st into a separate bucket of earned paid leave, physically separating it. It may draw them negative even in their sick leave when we do it. Do you guys want to chime in? What are you guys doing?
I'm gonna be honest, we still really haven't figured it all out. And I don't feel like I can, really let anybody know how it's working, because it isn't working well for us. And because there are so many different levels, I'm gonna be honest, it isn't working well for us in Brunswick, and we're still trying to work through it.
Adam, Mark?
Same boat.
Yeah, I mean, just so I don't forget, the information that Stacy shared about this bill, that's huge. I hope that MeASBO can fully get behind that with whatever clout we have. Whether it's people sharing testimony or us writing letters, to eliminate some of those, subs and things like that would be huge, I'm sure, for all of us. So I'm heartened to hear there's at least something in the works, because I wasn't sure if that would ever happen. I would say, I would agree with Kelly, we don't have it figured out. Some of it just doesn't work, but for the most part, we take the approach of what's the simplest possible path to complying with what we already have in place. So we always start with that. When we're looking at a particular group of employees, whether it's teachers or head techs or whatever it is, what do they already have for paid time off? How much would we have to tweak this to comply with the law? And if it's something that we can do with a few changes, that's the path that we try to take. In some instances, we've decided it is not worth it at all to try to set up these separate buckets. It's an administrative nightmare. So if we have to just allow some things to sort of roll in the employee's favor, fine. We can live with that. Like in the teacher contract, we talked about saying the first 5 days of your time off must be designated as EPL. That was not a popular thing, so we dropped it. We were like, okay, we can just live with it. You've got your bucket, your EPL is contained in there, and just put in, time as you always have. And for us, it seems to be working okay, as well as could be expected.
Andrea?
So that's exactly what we have. In all of our contracts, it says the first 40 hours used are used to satisfy EPL. So if somebody's out 5 sick days, they are out of, and they're 8-hour days, they are now out of EPL time. So that seems to be the simplest way for us. Also, our pro fund, all of the that left pro fund, we use pro fund to track hours. The only thing that you would need to do is change those daily positions to hourly. So we now pay ourselves on an hourly basis to help track their EPL time. But I'm with Adam. We can get it, if they can do away with temporary employees, that will solve a lot of our issues.
So Andrea was saying that in a lot of hers, it's the first 40 hours of used time are concurrent with EPL usage and then it's gone. So I think Drummond has really worked on that with a lot of school districts if you use them for negotiating as one of those areas where try to run it concurrently.
We've also been advised, Colin, not to track EPL separately. So we don't have a separate, they advise us not even to track it internally. So the only way that we know if somebody used their EPL is running a history in the current year. So if I can see that somebody used 5 days, then I know that they don't have anymore. I don't know why Drummond is advising against internally tracking EPL, but we've been advised that by 2 of their attorneys.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Stacy first. Stacy?
We recently negotiated our contracts and the school year employees are allowed to use 2 unpaid leave days for snow days, which means I have to budget 2 more days per position in the budget because that is a cost. Because those days are made up at the end of the year and we work them. So I wasn't there that night they negotiated that part.
So in her school district, she's saying that there was negotiated that 2 snow days per year can be used for EPL, and therefore she has to budget an additional 2 days in her budget to cover the costs of those additional 2 EPL days for snow days. Sherry?
I was just going to say, we use ProFund too. We were not advised by Drummond not to track it internally, but we do have a separate EPL accrual in ProFund, and then we just, if they use 2 personal days, we take it out of personal and the EPL, just to keep track of it.
Questions, comments, suggestions, things you're doing in your district that you want to share or feel would be helpful for all of us to hear? Yep.
We were told to never put EPL in a contract.
So there's varying forms. The comment was they were told not to put EPL into a contract. I've heard different segments of that from different attorneys, and part of that seems odd, but the other part of it from one perspective from certain attorneys is it's already a matter of law. And as a matter of law, you don't need to identify how you're going to apply the law. You just need to comply with the law, and it's management's decision on how to comply. So in the collective bargaining agreement, there's a lot of labor laws that aren't part of a collective bargaining agreement. And because it's law, as long as the district complies with the law, it doesn't need to get into the weeds. That's one perspective. I'm not saying it's good or bad or judging it. I'm just saying I have heard that as well from some attorneys. Yes?
I would say if you don't already have personal leave in here, that would, I would agree with that. But we kind of had to because we had personal in there. And otherwise, the staff felt like they got an additional 5 days. So we would have had to give them an additional 5 days. That's what our union was pushing for. So that's why we did it that way, because we didn't want to give them additional time.
We certainly don't give them additional time as a law, so we just simply have a law work. Our ed techs get 9 and 11 personal days. 9 is personal, so they can use it for anything they want. So that makes that not be an issue for that reason.
Yes?
When we were negotiating contracts, that was kind of the test that you said, okay, here's what EPL tells us what we have to do legally, what is your contract period? And then kind of trying to shore it up to that. And actually, one of the unions that concerned about the EPL because they thought we already took care of it in the current contract, so that was kind of surprising.
How many would like to see EPL go away for everybody? I think, I'm not sure whether the greater populace of society and/or legislators understand how this has impacted school districts. I think what really requires here, and I'm glad, Stacy, that there's some legislation at least to address part of this with more of the itinerant and part-time folks. But still, that helps significantly, but it still doesn't address probably 80% of all of our districts' EPL tracking, if you're going to track EPL. And if you're going to track EPL and manage that without a software, doing it manually in Excel is time consuming. So I think we're all in that same boat of, yes, we don't have it all down, and how are we managing that? And the question is, what initiative is there for us as business managers, as superintendents, as school districts, to say staff have plenty of leave time already? Is there a way legislatively to have the legislature understand that this really shouldn't apply to school districts?
Last year at Tri-State, I went to a meeting with Drummond and Woodson, and they apologized for pushing EPL. So they're not even happy with it.
So Bridget was saying she attended Tri-State last year, and Drummond isn't even happy with the law as it is.
Can I ask what you guys do, when this law came out, did you actually share this with substitutes and coaches? Because we didn't, okay, we just kept it on the down low, okay, so nobody has ever come to me, even though I keep track of it, nobody has ever come to me from the sub-sector and said, I'm supposed to get 2 hours off. I mean, like, how do other schools, like, what have you done?
So the question was, how do you deal in your district with, have you told subs and coaches and all those other people? And if so, then how do you handle that?
I can answer that for better or worse, we've done the same thing you did. We have not publicized it. We are tracking it. Essentially what we're doing for those types of folks now is once a year we're doing a recon and putting in an Excel sheet that John Doe earned 1 hour of leave. And if they come asking for it, then we will deal with it at that point. I can't say that that's the correct answer, but that's how we've handled it.
Agreed.
Any more on EPL, or do you want to switch topics? Other topics, what else is on your mind? Yes? Okay, so the question was, currently on ProFund, have it switched from ProFund. Is there a time frame before ProFund will end? And for those who've switched to Infinite Visions or another software, how do you like it? How did it work? And any suggestions or thoughts on other softwares as well?
I don't want to, is this on?
I don't know, try the bottom.
I don't want to go to confession this weekend, so I'm not going to tell you that I love Infinite Visions. Quite honestly, if you can hold off on moving, hold off on moving. It's a beast. Tough to work with, and right now I'm going to be seeking help from people in this room because I'm still not able to put my budget together with their budget module. I mean, there are some wonderful aspects of Infinite Visions, and one of the, I guess, the positive points, you'll hear from me a little later. But for the most part, right now, I'm in trouble. I have to produce a budget by the end of next week, and I'm still not able to do that. I've been doing this 9 years, you know, you think, and my first year was a challenge, of course, but with ProFund, it was a breeze. It has some good features, but the budget module is in trouble. And I am working with you know, the ProFund folks to try to resolve and get my situation fixed. But if you can hold off, because they have some serious work to do. It's just not work. I mean, it's not working for me. Others maybe are getting it to work, although I doubt it. But it's just not working for me.
Adam? I'm going to put Adam on the spot because Adam and I had this conversation a couple weeks ago.
I was commiserating with this one. We, in Lewiston, we use Munis, so I don't know Infinite Visions at all, but I would 100% agree with Mark's advice that if you can hang on to ProFund, just do it. Stay with it as long as you can. Make them drag you off of it kicking and screaming because it's the best software there is for Maine school districts. Having used Munis for many years, and again, I don't know Infinite Visions, I would strongly, strongly recommend that you look at Infinite Visions and any other software that may exist before choosing Munis. It is a beast. We have problems with it on a daily basis. It is extremely frustrating. Does it have some nice features? Sure. It's easy to pull things into Excel. It does not handle MainPers well at all. I'm currently also unable to complete my budget because of a glitch that they can't figure out. So it's just, it's not fun. So my advice is the same. Hold on to ProFund as long as you can. And I know Tyler does not endorse that message, but that's my 2 cents.
Scott?
So, as a consultant, I've gotten thrown into problems, and I've had to figure out how to solve them. A lot of that is through software. And what I've learned is I have to go out and find somebody in this organization to tell me what to do. But I found with this vision, that's virtually impossible. I see a huge amount of time being used in offices to learn. A proposal I was going to put together to send to the executive committee was to look seriously at putting together a package to lobby Tyler Technologies. Much like we lobby legislature, you pay somebody to put together a package, they go to Tyler, and they try to sell all of the issues in the software, from training to the complexity side, and get them to understand. Each one of you can complain to the person in Tyler that you deal with. They're one person, they're probably working from home. That's the end of that complaint. So just my 2 cents.
Thank you. So Scott's comment was, in his consulting, he's seen real struggles in getting Infinite Visions support, and is recommending that the ASBO look at contacting Tyler and see if there's a package that would be more cost effective in bulk than individually by district. Go ahead.
I just wanted to say that there is another option out there, AptiFund. We did a lot of exploring, and Infinite Visions, after talking to all of you, we were like, no, we can't do it, and the price was exorbitant. It was $50,000 or $60,000, and we're a small school district, and $50,000 or $60,000 is just not doable. So started talking to Kim Oliver, who now works for ActiFund, and Cassie at St. George, and some other people that have switched over, and we're in the process of switching to ActiFund. I hate to do it because I'm a ProFund, huge ProFund advocate, but I noticed that they're not updating to some of the newer things that we really need in ProFund, so we're switching. And I'll be happy to talk to anybody about the process as we go, but it does seem like it's better than Infinite Visions as far as I can see.
So Sherry said that she's switching to AptaFund instead of doing Infinite Visions or a Tyler product. Yes?
I was gonna ask somebody that has, we went live January 1, and in 5 years, I've never wanted to quit. And there was many days that I have to drive myself to work kicking and screaming, because this has made my life do it.
Meaning Infinite Visions.
If you have not done it, the 300 hours of training where you just sit there and they watch you work. I don't know what we actually paid for, because we built the entire system ourselves, and nothing works. The grants, I actually had somebody tell me the other day, well, we really don't do grants. The grants is a nightmare, which Zach told us, our district is huge with grants. We have a ton, that's mostly what I do is grants and payroll, and I can't even get a grant report to come out. All I want is the names of the employees that I paid and what day. And that's not even an option. But I was hoping to ask somebody today, if you have switched and can figure out the reporting and have gone able to get reports, I would appreciate the help. I can't even print a warrant right now. I tried, mine's still not working right, and my person has pretty much gone away. We can't reconcile the bank accounts, they're off. I pull up an employee history, and it looks like they took what was in Infinite Visions as of January 1 and just backdated the entire thing to July. So nobody's deductions are right, their direct deposits are all wrong. If anybody changed their taxes aren't even printed right. We have a serious issue in going into budget season, and I'm sure we are not alone in budget season is a nightmare this year between the cost evaluations going up and all the other costs. We just negotiated our support staff contract, which is a huge hit. And so trying to do a budget is, I can't even figure out how the budget modules work.
So can I summarize for you that you don't like Infinite Visions and it's terrible? For those who didn't hear everything on video, is that okay for me to say? Okay.
I definitely need help with anybody that has tried, anybody that has figured this out, because I have no support from Tyler at this point.
Okay. Yes.
We've been live with Infinite Visions since January of 2019, and I just finished my budget in Infinite Visions with no issues.
Can we go to break so I can talk to her?
With the reporting as well. We haven't had a ton of issues, and when we do have something, I will call the Infinite Vision support. Sometimes you have to wait on hold a while, or they will call you back. But everybody there has been so phenomenal. This is Melissa Landon. She is a hero HR guru. She's my best friend in the whole world. Because when we initially started, it's super time consuming to set up, and if things aren't done right, then it doesn't come back to bite you. So that's the big thing. We had Wanda Deschio as our implementer, and I don't know if she's implementing anymore. She was from ProFund. So that kind of helped. So we didn't implement her. We've never been in Maine with Maine State Retirement. No, that's when I became administrator.
Yeah, our person got done halfway through, and then we got shifted to somebody in Texas, and then they got done, and we got transferred to somebody from Florida, and then we got somebody else that kind of filled in from out west somewhere.
Oh, well.
So nobody has any idea about Maine State Retirement. So I think it was Melissa that helped me the other day with my Maine State Retirement issue.
Yes.
I was gonna try to host this at our school superintendent office, but a main users group meeting for iVisions to help each other, but it sounds like it would be too big in my conference room. Is there any way we could organize our own?
Yes.
Rent this place, find a time,
Yep.
and come together and help each other? Because I'd like to see something up on the screen. How did you do this? How did you find that? You find it once, a month later, you can't remember how you got there. So everybody's got challenges. Is there any way we can create our own users meeting?
We can, and let me reach out to you folks. and figure out where that is best to occur. Because it certainly sounds like it has to be an in-person thing. So let's help collaborate and work on that in order to do that. Andrea, I see your hand. We're gonna have to break. I'll get to you, Andrea, as a last one. Is more of this type of thing helpful? Where we do something a little less formal of a presentation and really just have open discussion time? We've messed around with it in the past and it hasn't been successful, but this morning it seems like there's no lack of topics for us to all share and learn from each other with. Just quickly, yes, no, yes. Is this helpful in some way to collaborate? Okay. Andrea, we'll go to you, then we're going to take a 10-minute break so we can try to stay on track as much as possible.
So to answer her original question, we have never been given a date that ProFund is going to die. And if you ask their representatives, they will not give you a date. So like Adam, they're going to have to pull ProFund out of my dead hands before I have it. The second suggestion that I had is for everyone to raise their hand so we can see what everyone is using, like who's using ProFund, who's using Infinite Visions, to get a better idea.
Sure. So who's still on ProFund? Who is on Infinite Visions? And you guys all love it is what I just heard, except for you folks. Who is on APTA? You. Switching? Switching. Who is on Munis?
We're on our way, we're going through ProFund.
Oh, it's a sad day, Hollis. I'm going to be sad for you all weekend now. But you can commiserate with Adam on how to build the budget. Who is on something other than those that I just mentioned? So, ProFund, APTA, Infinite Visions, and Munis. Those are the four, correct? No one's on anything other than that. And everything that's coming out of Infinite Visions I'm hearing from this morning is perfect, so when it goes to DOE and they're analyzing it, it's going to be 100% beautiful. But it is important, that's why it's important to have DOE here, because they need to also hear the struggles that are being faced in the trenches so that when stuff gets reported, you know, they're doing their job at DOE, which is taking the data and analyzing and assuming when it comes to them it's the most accurate data entirely possible. But if we are struggling on a particular software to get that information to be accurate, then I think that's also important for us to share, know, learn from, and try to improve upon. Real quick.
So in 2016-17, we converted to Infinite Visions as an early adopter, and we went live April 1st. And as of September 1st, they had us back on ProFund. They were doing our bank recs, they were doing our main purse for us, they were doing everything for us, and my job, more than half the time of my job became payroll, because it was so much more work. So it's very disheartening to hear. So I wrote a 50-page document and sent it to Chris, somebody at Tyler Tech in Yarmouth. And so they put us back to ProFund, and they stopped, I think, implementation of Infinite Visions for like a year. So it's really disheartening to hear that they rolled it back out and they still don't have these issues resolved in 6-7 years later.
So the comment was, went to Infinite Visions, was on it for approximately 6 months. Tyler Tech switched them back to ProFund because of problems. They were going to try to resolve those problems, but there are still problems even though it's being rolled out to new customers. I really got to keep Chelsea Forden on time here, so other presenters have schedules. I'm sorry about that because this is going extremely well. I want to make sure we take a break as well. Please network with people. We will come back to this for Infinite Visions. I will coordinate with some folks in order to get that.
Hey, Chelsea.
You okay?
I'm okay. I'm not in a rush.
Okay.
It's important. Take the time you need.
Okay. I appreciate that. So what we will do is, on the Infinite Visions, who's having problems with APTA, Pro Fund, Munis? I don't know what to tell you. My heart goes out to you, it really does, but I don't know what to tell you. Scott Vatonis has just learned that his business is gonna boom because he's gonna be an Infinite Vision expert. He's gonna dig into this so deep that he is going to have a retirement that's a 60-hour-a-week job now because he's got a new business, right, Scott?
I want to affect change.
We all want to affect change, and I agree with that. I think it is important, though, from what I've heard this morning, that those who are really struggling with Infinite Visions have a voice that is supporting them and helping them, and we certainly can and will do that. As part of MeASBO, that's part of what we exist for, is to support. So let's talk about that more. Let's see what we can do to help support that. I don't mean to leave you and Adam out there with Munis, but Adam and I had a conversation about 2 weeks ago, and at the end of it, after about 30 minutes of him talking, he said, I really didn't get anything accomplished, but I feel a whole hell of a lot better that I was able to vent to you and really appreciate the fact you listened to me. And I said, that's great, Adam. But sometimes that's what we do, right? As peers, colleagues, friends. Sometimes it's supporting and listening, even if we can't solve the problem. So that's what we need to do for each other in this room and outside of this room with our peers and colleagues, is really support each other in those efforts to get what we need to do our jobs more efficiently, whether it's EPL, Infinite Visions, or something else. This has been really helpful. This has been much better than I could have hoped for in this session. I think we could have gone on for probably another hour or two just on this and different topics, because I'm sure folks in the audience still haven't been able to say everything they want to bring up this morning, but we will bring it back. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for being open, because that's how these sessions really help everyone in the room.
Colin, can I get just one quick thing out?
You can.
I'm sorry, but I gotta.
Are you going to do cyber? Are you going to do how you got attacked?
Yeah, I want to
Okay.
at least feel that I've contributed something before
Yep.
I leave. But on Tuesday, we received an email from an employee. Her name is Margaret, but she goes by Peg. She's gone by Peg for years. We received an email from Margaret that she wanted to change her bank account on her direct deposit with an attached check and everything. It was from a Gmail account. We generally expect to see it from an RSU email, but so we submitted the form. There's a form we require. We sent it back. A couple hours later, they sent the form all completed. And so we made the change. Well, again, this is the positive thing you're going to hear from me about Infinite Visions. The system sent Peg an email saying that we had changed her bank. And luckily, because she called us and said, I didn't change my bank. So anyway, she got hacked. Her information got hacked, and we notified the police department. They actually got a hold of the bank. It was a Green Dot Bank or something, a legitimate online bank. And of course, they closed the account, but be careful out there. So now we're going to be a little more vigilant. Those types of requests are going to be, eyeball to eyeball, or we're going to talk on the phone or something. But just be careful.
That happened to us too.
It did?
Just so you know.
Wow, holy cow. Yeah,
There's been those. There's also been, if you do a lot of ACH work, emails saying vendor A has changed their routing number. It's on legitimate, or what appears to be legitimate business letterhead for that business, because someone has gone in, taken their letterhead, swiped it, scanned it, altered it, and then sent it back to you because they know somehow that they're a vendor of your school district and said, change our ACH routing number. That is a common theme right now too. I think we could do a whole hour session on just cyber and how we protect ourselves in the business office on cyber as well. Could be a topic, but there's a lot out there right now. We're gonna do 10 minutes, maybe 12 minutes, about 10:40. Chelsea, is that all right? And we'll reconvene, get some food. Restrooms are on this side in the hallway, just before the double doors, down on this my right-hand side. And we'll see you in about 10 minutes.
Oh, I can back up too. Tell me when you're ready. I'm Chelsea Fortin-Trimble. I'm the department's Associate Commissioner of Policy and Programs. And this morning we're going to be talking a bit about some updates in federal programs and with the state legislature. So Title I. Title I allocations this year, as you know, we use safety data. If you come from a community of more than 200,000 people, we use safety data. Well, two communities have seen some increases in your population. And so our Title I team will be reaching out to you very shortly to let you know that the data came back to say that you are no longer eligible to use the alternative formula of Title I. Paula, I'm not sure if the two districts are even represented here this morning, but if they are, let me know, and I'll make sure that I check in with you before I leave today. Title I allocations, as you also know, many of you come back and you can use the alternative formula. It hasn't been super helpful to you these past couple of years. These kids are not returning the national school lunch breaks. And so, in collaboration with the school finance team, Paula and Micah, as well as Memory, the department has been working on a few different options for creating Title I allocations in the future. We believe that in about 2 weeks' time, we'll be able to roll out our decision to all of you. That will take at least a month to follow. We've obviously run the data for what it looks like to use the free data, and it's pretty bleak. Because as many of you know, as we've been going through other conversations about that data, is that it's not representative of what's true now. And so that is why we are going to be proposing an alternative way to determine Title I eligibility for those of you that have been 200K or less. Well, I want to pause and make sure if there's anything else you want to say related to this, because we're all working on it together. No, here, take this one.
Hi. Okay. So the only clarification I would say is there's a couple of aspects here. One is Title I, using the lunch forms, nutrition forms. The other is EPS. They're not the same. And so what Chelsea's talking about right now is Title I and these federal funds. I will talk a little bit later about what we're looking into regarding EPS and the numbers for each one. Just a clarification.
Keep that one. Sometime with Title I, and the feedback that you've all given us, which is great feedback, hey, if you use the data from free and reduced lunch forms, you're not going to capture true poverty in the community. We heard that. We've had an internal work group. We've been telling your superintendents about this effort. We're about 2 weeks out before we'll roll out our new method. The new method, of course, will be something we'll talk about. You will not be surprised by it. We will make sure we communicate with you directly if it's going to impact your award significantly. Are there questions or feedback that you want me to hear about Title I allocations in the community? Okay. Title I Summer School. We are going to use reallocated funds yet again this year. You'll hear about it in the next 2 weeks by March 15. If you are a district that would like to apply for reallocated funds, your assistant superintendent or curriculum director will be invited to a webinar to learn more about this year's process. Any questions about Title I Summer School? I want to make a big plug, though, that ARP has a set aside that is for summer programming. So, of course, pursue the Title I opportunity, but I may suggest that you look at ARP first before you go into the Title I reallocated pot. Assessment and accountability we've covered this morning, and so I'm going to pause for any ESEA-related questions from the group.
reimbursement. You are very polite, so I'm going to have a raise of reimbursement and ask for your forgiveness and let you know I did meet with the procurement folks yesterday. They assured me that the issue with the glitch that was in their building system, speaking to our application system, has been addressed. If you were in that delay where you were included within that batch, I am deeply sorry for the delay, and I am standing here before you saying we fixed it. It should not happen again. It does happen that you are 3 to 4 weeks waiting for your reimbursement. Please reach out to us so that we can connect with our sister agency over at DAX and check in about what is going on their end. But our ESA team, Measure Relief teams, are approving your requests on a daily basis. We then work with the accountants over in DAX to get those checks cut and sent to our team. So I'm sorry for the delay, but I do think we're moving in the right direction starting this week. Legislation, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Dr. Laura Sear, as she is going to talk you through some interesting bills that are going to be before the Education and Cultural Affairs Committee, tell you about how you might become involved.
Thank you, Chelsea. And fortunately, I don't have to play with the computer screen and the slideshow, so I'm just going to talk for you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having us. I'm Laura Sear. I am the Legislative and Constituent Services Specialist with the Maine DOE. It's been busy so far. This session has had, so far, the largest number of bills submitted in memory. At last count, there are about 2,300 bills that were referred to the revisor's office. We haven't received all of them yet. In comparison, the last 2 sessions had about 2,100 and 2,000 respectively. So we're setting a new bar here. We're very excited. About 193 of these bills have been referred to the Department, not to the Department of Education because that would be silly, to the Education and Cultural Affairs Committee, which we monitor. We have received about 68 of them so far, so things are on a slow start, but in the next couple of weeks, we're expecting to see that ramp up quite a bit. We'll be in committees nearly every day, and we'll have a lot more information flying downstairs into the committee rooms. So we began this session with our new batch of legislators by offering a general overview of what the Department of Education does. I like to tell folks who don't quite understand that I work in education, but I'm not a teacher. Try and figure that one out. I like to tell them that we don't deliver education, we support the folks who deliver the education. So all of you, our job is to support you. And while we're doing that, one of the things we do to try and support all of you is help our legislators understand the difference between our folks out in the field delivering education and what we do, which is trying to govern education. Not the easiest task that we have in front of us. So we've been talking to the Legislative Committee about our whole student framework. We've been talking about social emotional learning, workforce development, the EPS formula. Full disclosure, I'm not talking about the EPS formula. I'm never, ever going to talk about that. That's all going to be Paula. And other aspects of governing education in support of your work that we're trying to do up on the 5th floor of that building. So that these new members, these new legislators, some of which have never been on the Education Committee before, some of whom this may be their first session as a legislator, we want them to understand, to be familiar, and to have a level of comfort asking those tough questions so that they can make those tough decisions. This last week, our major focus has been the budget. We've been working with the Education and Cultural Affairs Committee on their continued work on education-related initiatives. Our staff has been collaborating with them on an hourly basis in some cases to help deliver some timely responses to help them dig into these initiatives to disperse this funding. And so I mentioned that we haven't received a lot of the bills scheduled in committee just yet, but let me tell you about a couple of the department bills that we've submitted that have had public hearings so far. And of these 3 bills, none of them have been scheduled for a work session just yet. So the first one, LD 33, is an act to expand access to CTE opportunities for middle school students and was sponsored by Senator Rafferty. So, and that information, some of that information is right up on the slides, so no need to memorize any of these LD numbers. This bill is hoping to allow the expansion of career and technical education to schools for middle school students. The allocation of funds would be sent directly to the CTE centers and regions, which is a slight change. If anyone is familiar with the pilot program that had been in the last session, I believe, this is a slight change. And so the CTE centers and regions will receive that disbursement directly. LD 79, an act to ensure a high-quality education for students with disabilities. This is a long one. By clarifying the definition of state agency client and who provides special education programs and services, sponsored by Representative Crafts. This is a bill that we hope will clarify some very outdated language and eligibility requirements regarding who receives these services. The intention here is that there will be no disruption of coverage and programming for these students, so that would be a plus. And our last department bill, LD 98, an act to update the special education laws, sponsored by Representative Brennan. This bill proposes to change the age of eligibility for special education services and for participation in career and technical education courses by adults who are enrolled in special education services. And so it would change the upper age of enrollment from 20 to up to the 22nd birthday. I see some folks furiously writing some notes, so I'll pause there to let folks catch up. It also updates some outdated language. For instance, we no longer use PET, we use IEP. That is getting updated in this language, and updates references to deafness and blindness. As I mentioned, none of these bills has been scheduled for a work session yet. Some of the other bills we have been watching this session includes, you're probably all familiar with the annual review of what is EPS. And so again, this session we have some bills that would dig into adjustments to EPS. Bills like this are pretty routine for the first session of each legislature, and we'll continue to watch their progress. Others, the final one on the slide up here, LD 889, an act to better support the educational attainment of low and moderate income communities by providing additional funding to certain school administrative units. This bill is hoping to make some of those adjustments without digging into the EPS formula at all. So this would be a grant program, an educational opportunity grant program. We don't have information on a public hearing for this one yet, but it is March now, so things should be moving pretty quickly. Other trends we're seeing this session, bills related to school safety, health, construction, and debt service limits. Debt service limits including increasing the debt service limit and expanding the term of service from 20 years to from 25 years to 30 years. Let me see here. We also have some curriculum proposals, changes to the retirement calculations and who and when they're eligible. We have some, lost my place here, teacher certification requirements and Bills related to SAUs with new and increased populations of students. So we're looking at multilingual learners here. We're looking at students who are at risk for high mobility, students who have housing insecurity, these sorts of adjustments. I'm going to pause there because that was a lot of information about bills. Does anyone have any questions about bills that they've heard, or any questions about these particular bills that I've highlighted? That is a brand new bill that was just printed this week, and we are monitoring that. It has not yet received a public hearing date, but we'll keep our eye on that. And so that's a great point. There is one bill that would be increasing the minimum wage for school support staff to 125% of the state minimum wage, and this would be this would include a corresponding increase every year that the state minimum wage increases. There's another bill that would provide a similar increase to ed techs and I believe ed specialists, but I may be incorrect on that. So there are two very similar bills. Other questions? All right. While I have your attention, I just wanted to mention, sorry, did you have a question? Nope. My eye's playing tricks on me. I just wanted to mention that outreach from all of you is incredibly important to the legislature. Your membership and your expertise provides them with information that is a little beyond what we can provide at the DOE, right? It's that difference again between delivering education and governing education. Your experience delivering it is very meaningful to them. So I want to encourage folks, when you hear about bills that are of particular interest, go ahead and reach out to your local representatives, your local senators. Go ahead and write those letters. Your testimony, they will always make time for it. I've been associated with legislative sessions for a number of years now, and the one thing that seems to always hold true, no matter who's sitting in the seats, is that your voices and the voices of students will move them much further than we can move them. So don't hesitate to reach out. If there's anything that I or Courtney Belolan, the Director of Policy and Government, can help you with, any information that we can find for you, don't hesitate to reach out to us. And I wanted to, one last thing is, where did I put that information? And we can provide this in some later information. But for folks who want to, and maybe not everybody is a policy nerd like I am, but for folks who want to listen to the committee testimonies, you can do that by accessing legislature.maine.gov/committee. There'll be a drop-down box on the left-hand side of that page. And so all of the committees that the legislature has, you'll be able to choose. Education and Cultural Affairs is where I hang out. On the right-hand side of that screen is a blue link to the live stream of any committee hearing. So you can listen to your heart's content. There are also at the bottom of that page archived public hearings. So you can really run wild with this. So I wanted to mention that. This is also where, if you chose to submit testimony, you can do that virtually. I know we're recording this for virtual participation later on, and the legislature is still doing that too. Public participation really increased with the advent of Zoom. And so we are navigating this new hybrid world so that if you can't take time out of your day because you live in York County, that makes sense. You can pop in virtually, and the link to the electronic testimony will walk you through all of the steps to getting that Zoom link and submitting your testimony. All right, I think that's it for me. Go ahead with a question. I did not yet memorize that, but I have a way of doing that, and we can get that information to you later. that is a fantastic idea. And I have to disclose that I'm fairly new in this job, and so I'm not certain that we do that. So I'll have to defer to Chelsea.
Yeah, so we do meet every other week with Ed Org leaders. And so Andrea joins us for those conversations. I know there's a subset of the Ed Org leaders that actually meet before our meeting to talk through legislation. But we then provide updates of what's going to be happening in committee that Ed leaders should know about and be engaged in during those meetings. And so we can absolutely share what we're sharing with Ed Orgs with this group. Or Andrea, you can feel free to share it beyond our smaller group discussion. Because the department's position on most bills is actually not shared in that conversation. It's more of an update of this is what's about to happen, impact you, here are the things you want to consider. We go through a process with the administration and the governor's office to determine our positions leading up to every hearing.
Any other questions for me? All right. I'm going to take that as my exit stage left. Thank you all so much.
I didn't, yeah.
Oh, that was one other slide of yours. Did you want to?
I did, yes.
Okay.
I'll just project. So I wanted to let you know that the Education and Cultural Affairs Committee, they did handle the budget this week. It was a success. Their report will be given to AFA, the Appropriations and Finance Committee, to say, yes, we support funding education at the 55%. The LD number right there, I've hyperlinked it so when you get the deck, you can follow along through the many iterations that the budget will go through before the end of June when it is successfully passed. We are not concerned, though, about the 55% going away or being changed. There was complete support. The committee had great discussion about what that meant. And Paula did a really lovely job explaining to them what the EPS funding formula actually means and how it is calculated. They were not only convinced, I would say they were charmed by her presentation. So thank you, Paula, for your leadership, and we'll keep you updated. If we hear that things are changing, or that maybe something on the purple sheet, the hardship, does actually get the increase that the Democrats are recommending, they've recommended on top of the governor's proposal of $1 million to add another $1 million, so we're at $2 million. When things like that shift, if we know about it, we'll be sure to share it with you folks so that you can be in the know as well.
Thank you very much. So I'm going to take a minute and provide the information that Laura didn't have handy just because I have the email right here that I got this morning. So LD 951 is an act to amend the state education funding formula to create, oops, wrong one. That's a different one, but you might want to look at that one as well. An act to amend the state education funding formula to create equity between municipalities by adding median income to the formula. Brand new to me, I've got to look at that one. LD 955, an act to address shortages of school support staff by increasing the minimum hourly wage for those staff. And then LD 974, an act to establish minimum pay for educational technicians and other support staff. So those are the three new ones. So what I've done, you can hear me, right? Okay. What I've done is I've created a really long slide deck, and we don't have enough time. We've got 20 minutes. Is that right? Well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to respect your time, and I'm going to kind of really just quickly go through many of these because much of this is truly, like it says, school finance basics. Many of you know these basics. Many of you are new, and so I'm glad I put this together in a slide deck. And then you can have the deck later, and then you can contact any of my team or myself if you have questions. But truly, this will just go through the basics. What do we do at school finance? We're the oversight of the school, public school state funding. And I bolded state because I just want you to understand, the funds that go through EPS, none of that is federal funds. Those are completely separate. Distribution and accountability, main roles of the team. Title 20A, 606B is where you'll find everything that the formula does is in statute. And a neat little sentence that Courtney actually was able to come up with this year that I think is a really good explanation. The EPS formula provides the state with a mechanism for establishing a minimum sufficient funding level for achieving the learning results and an equitable way to distribute the funding responsibility between local communities and state. That's the goal. That's the desire. Is it perfect? No. I'm the first to admit it. But I think it does a pretty decent job overall, honestly. However, one of my favorite examples to share, and many of you have seen this already, is basically this example of, let's assume that your town and your ability to pay your property valuation locally are the children and each of them at their different heights. So each of them has an opportunity to see over this fence at different levels depending on the height that they start with. Where are they starting? What are they starting out with? Let's say the state funding, which is limited, as you know, are the boxes. If we were to give the same box to every student, there are some students that are still not going to be able to achieve the learning results or look over the fence, so to speak. However, if we can distribute the funds that the state has in such a manner that we give more to those that have less available already and less to others, then everybody has the same chance of achieving those results. That's what we're trying to attain. That is why not everybody receives the same percentage of state support, but everybody receives something, and we're trying to do it in an equitable way. Ida teases me. She says they're actually stealing a ballroom, but we won't go there. I'm not going to go through all of these slides. I did break the golden rule and put a lot of words on slides, but you all will have them for you later. But one of the big things I want to point out, what EPS is not. This is not a prescription for how funds should be spent. We're not telling you how to spend the funding that we provide. It's not the decisive amount of what you should be spending on education in your SAU. You can spend more, you can spend less. This is what the EPS formula is allocating at the essential level. We're not going to tell you how to budget or how much to budget and spend. Those are all local decisions. So, I'm all about pie. In FY24, this is showing the example of the total cost of education as defined by the Essential Programs and Services calculation. This also includes, by the way, those purple sheet items. So the total cost, who doesn't know what a purple sheet is? Ah, you all know what a purple sheet is. If you want to see the purple sheet, it's on our website. It's available. So the total cost for FY24 is $2.5 billion. 55% of that is what the state is contributing according to the statute, which is $1.4 billion, which leaves the 45% for the local side, which is $1.145 billion. So just showing you, and I'm going to show you later a comparison of how this looks compared to last year, because as you all have heard, the mill rate, which at mill expectation, expected local contribution, did go up from 7.1 in FY23 to 7.29 in FY24. And the main reason for that, as you see, the state is still providing 55%, but the cost went up. And if the cost went up, both sides are going to pay more. And so that's the main reason. We have key operating components, cost-driven, pupil counts. I'm truly not going to go through any of these because I want to get to the stuff that you probably want to know about more, which is last year to this year. But this is all here for your information. The data that we use for each section of your ED 279 report is laid out here to help you as you're doing your jobs, to ensure that the data that we collect is accurate, timely, and correct, so that the calculations and the funding that we provide is exactly what you should have according to the EPS formula. I'm giving you some indicators on where to go to look at data. This will tell you where to go to look at your student data. How do you verify? If you don't know, okay, just making sure I'm on the right one. I've got 2 up here, so I'm not sure which one I'm on. So student data, you can go check that before you verify, before our deadline of October 1 is the collection date. The deadline before we have to start doing everything, we have to freeze everything, is November 30. I'm hearing from people now that their numbers were wrong last year. So I'm doing the best I can. We're looking into whether there's funding available to allow for these errors, but it would be, the best thing is to make sure that they're correct in the fall before we've already distributed all of the funding. We work with you. We're here to answer your questions. We call you sometimes if we see something that seems odd to make sure it's right. We want to be your partner in making sure that the calculations are correct and that the data that you've provided is accurate. So we've got the student data that you can verify. Here's all the staff data that we use in the EPS calculation, as well as the FTEs that are used. Lots of information that we're providing. All of this information, by the way, is on our website. And then you can go in and, so you all know about NEO, and maybe you don't know why it's called NEO. Well, it's called NEO because about, 10 years ago when they started creating it, the programmers really liked the movie Matrix. And in the movie Matrix, there was a character named Neo. So as educators within our department, we said, well, what does NEO stand for? It must stand for something. There's always an acronym, always means something. Well, so somebody came up with New Education Ontology. Still don't know what it means. But this is our system for collecting data. So there is a way of verifying your staff data as well. Got that information in here. Some more hints on what to look for. Happy to go through it later. Regional adjustments. Yes, the regional adjustments are not up to date. We are literally working on that as we speak to determine how best to bring these up to date. They have not been changed since FY6, when the EPS formula was first put into place. They are very much outdated. However, here's the issue. When we make a change to update things such as regional adjustment, where there are some that will be above average and some that will be below average, there are going to be some winners and there are going to be some losers. And so how do we do that in such a way to hurt the least possible? So that's what we're looking into. But we realize this is a section of the formula that definitely needs an update. If anybody has questions, please feel free to yell, because I'm going to just slide through many of these first ones. Section 2 is where we allocate the funding based on everything that we've calculated in Section 1, based on your subsidy or resident counts. This is also where isolated small adjustment is put into play. If you're isolated and small, there's an additional adjustment. Section 3 is where things shift a little bit from cost-driven to mainly expenditure-driven. This is where we look at your gifted and talented. The allocation provided is based on your budget and your actual expenditure. So what did you budget for and what did you expend 2 years prior? Why is it 2 years prior? Why are we 2 years behind in our data? Well, we just had to release FY24 calculations. The most recent available expenditure data is FY22. So that's why. We haven't, we're not done with FY23 yet, so we can't exactly use those funds. But we do allow for a inflation factor. So we try to accommodate as much as we can with this formula. Then we go into the special education, high cost out of district, transportation, approved buses. This is why your account coding is so important. This is why it's so important to get everything to the way that we are going to be pulling it out for our calculation. We have the handbook on our website. We have Denise, Ida, somebody new soon, hopefully, that will answer your calls and help you make sure your coding is appropriate. Because when we go to pull the data out of what you've uploaded into our financial system, if it's not coded properly, it's not going to end up in the calculation the way it should. So, after we determine how much each SAU needs, we then need to look into a state and local share, which at this time is using valuation by town as an ability to pay. We look at, for combined towns or RSUs, SADs, we look at the percentage of pupils from each town to distribute the allocation of the required funding that gets calculated. And the mill expectation is calculated after we've determined the total cost for the entire state, total cost of education according to EPS. Then we have to look at how much funds are available from the state, that 55%, determine how much we have left to fill that gap, and then the total valuation of all the towns in the state to determine what that mill rate needs to be in order to get that contribution at the local level. And then we look at distribution according to, as I mentioned, residents by town. As far as valuation by town, we do use either the most recent or a 3-year average, whichever is lower. Try to provide a buffer if you're which we had 6% increase over the state of Maine over last year for the valuation. So valuations are certainly increasing. And then we get into section 5 of your ED 279, where we look at adjustments. We also add in here some the funding if you have a career and technology center within your SAU. This is where you would find the funds specifically for that. That's stateside only. That does not get factored into the local share. And some of the adjustments that you might see if you're a minimum receiver, which I'll explain that in a minute too. This is where you would see an adjustment, because up until this point, as a minimum receiver, you would be getting either no or very little allocation from the state, because your ability to pay is either higher or at the same level as what your cost of education is. But because everybody gets something, there are adjustments for minimum receivers, and so this is where you would see those. This is also where, if you have a long-term drug treatment center, if you're a member of an education service center, this is where you would see that allocation. 5B adjustments, so the bottom section on that last page, are all stateside only. It does not impact your local share at all. So how do we determine how much of a slice of that pie everybody gets? Well, I'm giving you 2 examples here. This is Augusta. This is how we distribute the pie. Augusta, for FY24, when we did all of the calculations based on their student data, their financial data, their staff data, came out to be $27.9 million. Their town valuation is $1.7 billion, with the mill rate expectation at 7.29 for everybody. So what that means, by the way, nobody in the state is going to be expected to contribute locally more than 7.29. That's the base. 7.29 is the most any town will be asked to contribute towards funding. There are some that contribute less, and that's where the minimum receiver stuff comes in. But for this, for Augusta, at 7.29, their ability to pay would be $12.8 million. So if you look at the calculation here, 27.9 minus their ability to pay leaves $15 million, and that's what the state contribution is. So for Augusta, they're going to be getting $15 million from the state to help cover the cost. Now, Augusta also, by the way, is a CTE center, and so we also provide an additional $2.6 million towards the CTE. And that is not, again, part of the local share. That is state share only. Here's an example of a minimum receiver. So York, their cost of education, according to EPS, is $22.3 million. Their valuation is $4.9 billion. So using 7.29, their ability to pay would be $35 million. However, their cost is only 22. So clearly, we're not going to ask them to pay more than they need. But their ability to pay is the entire cost. So the state contribution is zero at this point. However, when you factor in the minimum receiver adjustment, they actually are going to get $3 million from the state, which lowers their local share from $22 million to $19 million. And so this is just kind of an example of one of our minimum receivers to show you how that works and why. Again, just to reiterate, when an SAU or town's ability to pay, according to the current mill expectation, is greater than their required local contribution, they are considered a minimum receiver. And remember, as my sign says, the EPS funding formula is meant to equitably distribute limited state funds to the areas that need them the most. And so if you can afford to pay a little more locally, we're going to use the state funds for those that can't. This is how you access your 279 report if you don't know. Alternate economic disadvantage status form. Who is tired of hearing that? I know I am. Okay. So here's the deal. As Chelsea mentioned earlier, we are looking into alternate options. Right now, however, the EPS statute identifies economically disadvantaged as those students that are eligible for free or reduced lunch according to federal guidelines. So that's the definition in statute right now. That being said, we learned 5 years ago when CEP schools came into existence that many parents were not filling out the federal nutrition free and reduced lunch forms even then, even less now after COVID. We created what is known as the alternate economic disadvantage status form. This is only for EPS purposes. It cannot be used for federal or nutrition or any of those things. However, it can be used to identify those that are economically disadvantaged for the EPS calculation. We are talking with all the other groups to see if there's a way we can find one identifier that will work best for everybody. But in the meantime, this is what we have. We have already updated the FY24 version that you'll want to use for the coming year so that you can plan now to how you want to try to get these forms filled out, because this is so important for your funding to get the economic disadvantaged accounts correctly and better. The form that we've created here is much less, actually I think I'm going to share it with you. It's much less, here we go, asking for less information than the federal nutrition form. It's using the same guidelines, but it's asking just for a student's name, the name of the school, their current grade, and whether they meet the guidelines that are up above for free or reduced, yes or no. The parent signs it, you collect the information. How you want to do this is up to you. This is just a template for you to use. Some districts have put it online. Others have put it on a table at their opening day workshops or similar, just so that parents can quickly, easily fill it out. And then you'll have it. Now, this form cannot be used, as I said, for nutrition, Title I or any of the federal funding, but it can be used for EPS purposes. Your nutrition people shouldn't be touching this form. They shouldn't be entering this form. This has to be somebody else that enters this into your system. If you're not sure how to enter it, the help desk will be happy to help you. And hopefully maybe at least in the interim, because I don't see a solution coming in time for FY24. Maybe I'm wrong. That would be great. But let's be prepared just in case and be ready to use this form again, just in case. Any questions about that?
You say you don't see a solution, it's because the 2,000 bills that we're aware of do not address this problem. So we don't see statute change during the first session of the 31st.
Correct. We are looking for a solution. We are trying to find one, and I really hope that we can find one very soon and have it in time for possibly the next session. I don't see it happening for this session. Just being honest with you. Andrea?
That is accurate, and we've raised this to Adrian and Jane, our directors of child nutrition, and they are in communication with the U.S. Department of Ag, as well as looking into an opportunity that may come to us this summer to reset things. But at this point, Ag has said that they are not intending to make any changes, but then the summer's opportunity might give us a way into this conversation that we were not expecting on the front end. There are other states that have received a waiver. Hawaii is one of them because of their context. And so that's a huge request to be considered by the state regulator. Sure. Yeah, our data team actually was a part of a pilot the past several years to do exactly what you're describing, Andrea, and the result, we met with folks from the U.S. Department of Ed a few months ago to say, okay, this is where we are, here are our results, we did this in other states, what comes next? And the U.S. Department of Ed person said to us in that conversation, thank you, we'll take it under advisement. I want you to know the Secretary of Education and his team have no intention of making this change at this time. To which we said, well then, why did you put all this money towards a pilot and we invested all of this time? And they said, well, it's going to give us more information to consider in the future.
So that being said, EPS is considering all sources at this time. And I do believe there is a bill actually for us to look at those. So a resolve for us to examine those, which we were going to do anyway. So we're looking, and if necessary, we can do a state, see if we can have something in the state legislature. But again, I don't expect it this session, so I just want everybody to be prepared ahead of time to be ready to collect them, that information as best you can in whatever way possible. Oh, and deadlines. All these wonderful deadlines and reports and information. I've got lots of, this is great. You can click on this. You can see it. It would be great. If I made it bigger, that might help. All right, so basically these are the reports that impact the EPS calculation. When they're due, what they include, how you go into them, all of that wonderful information. Why is it important? Well, these are some of the errors that we found out about after EPS was already done calculating, after the 8279s were made public, after all of the funding had been allocated. The big one that I would point you to is 132 students not identified as economic disadvantaged for that particular district. it was $1 million that was left out of their allocation in that particular year. Some of these numbers are smaller, but every dollar matters, right? It does to me. I'm assuming it does to you. So staff data, extremely important, making sure that your staff data is correct, that their level of education and that their years of experience are accurate. Student data, obviously extremely important. Your financials, gifted and talented, special ed, and then of course CTE has its own calculation formula now, so it's important to make sure that all of that information is accurate as well. It's my little why data matters speech. And then the last part, and I leave this for last because I do try to keep the fun in funding, that's my new hashtag, and accountability is never fun. So, but in order to ensure accountability for all of the funding, the state funding, all of SAUs are required to submit a financial audit, and that is per statute. All right, what did we do? What did we suggest this year for the formula? Well, this is a lot of words, and I apologize, but I've given Andrea a one-page handout that she can send out to the rest of you that I'm sorry I didn't think to bring copies of with me today. But basically, it's all of this information. So one of the things that you should be aware of is that we did have a couple years of changes to the FTE, to the student-to-teacher ratio to allow for the fact of the COVID disruptions. Those have gone away. The COVID emergency is done. So those 1 year or 2 year changes have gone away. So for FY24, we are back to what statute has for a student-to-teacher ratio from back to 17 to 1 for both the elementary grades 1 to 5 and grades 6 to 8. And then of course the other one that we had done for that 1 year last year because of the lack of ability to receive these forms was changing the weight of the economic disadvantage to 0.2, and also we used a percentage that was either that was the highest of 3 years. That went away. So we don't have that this year. So we're back to using exactly what you collected last year, which is why I brought up the alternate formula. Let's be prepared to try to get as much as we can for FY25 collection, or calculation collection. We did make some headway, however, with things that hadn't been changed in the formula in a long time. We are recommending that the salary minimum be $40,000. Well, isn't that what you guys are required to do according to statute? Yes, so that's, now the formula is up to speed as well. As of FY24, the recommendation is that our salary matrix that we use for everybody is a $40,000 minimum. The other change that hadn't been done since FY6, when EPS began, were the percentage of benefits for the EPS staff on page 1 of your formula. As you can see, there's been quite a difference over the last 13 years, and so we are now hopefully at a better level to meet what's actually happening in the field by increasing these percentages. However, that being said, an increase to percentages and an increase to salary is going to increase, anybody? Cost? So when we did calculate the total cost of education, it went up from 1.534 in FY23 to 1.566 in FY24. So this is just an example of showing you the change from year to year of the cost. Debt service went up a bit. The normalized cost of teacher retirement, that was a significant increase. I don't know if you must be aware that this is happening. It was a surprise to me when I received that information from Maine PERS. But that was a significant increase. So many of you are seeing that as an increase on your ED 279. The, let's see, targeted funds, these are the purple sheet items. Those actually didn't go up much. a little bit, and one of them went down. So that's where we come up with the total cost. That's where the state contribution for both years is 55%. And this is a better way to show it. Pie. So as you can see, the FY23 pie is a little bit smaller than the FY24 pie. So the pie got bigger, the state's at 55%, locals at 45%. So the increase was 3.37, so both sides are increased by 3.37 to make up the difference. This is why the mill rate went up to 7.29. So by the numbers though, with this change, 135 school administrative units did actually see an increase. I won't claim that it's a lot, but did see an increase in state funding over FY23, and 128 saw a decrease. Some of them more significant than others. And just to show you what's happening over the last 5 years, you see the dip, the COVID dip, I call it, in enrollment, subsidy enrollment, starting to come back a little bit, except grades K to 8 seems to be a little bit flat when you look at them all, which technically I believe is because of pre-K, K to 2, the younger grades, according to what I'm seeing. And of course, grades 9 to 12. But remember, even before COVID, we were having a decline in student enrollment. And so I don't expect our enrollment to get back up to pre-COVID numbers necessarily. And then finally, here we are. You can call us, you can write to us, you can stop in and see us, bring coffee. I mean chocolate. And that is what I had for you, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Did I miss anything, Colin, that we had talked about? So my priorities, I had mentioned to Colin, and I'll just reiterate, my priorities this year are to try to find a better way of determining economic disadvantage for the formula, to find a good way to update the regional adjustments in the formula. Where's the third one?
Which is a potential way of not just looking at valuation as from 2006 to now as the only source of determining, once you get past EPS on page 4, is how do we then allocate those dollars that are in the pie to school districts and basing it upon an evaluation. I mean, folks up on the coast have been complaining about that for years, and you may have a very high property valued home with very low income individuals. And is that the most appropriate way? In fairness to Paula, she's right. She and I have had some very in-depth conversations, and we don't always agree, but it is a matter of there's only so much money and so much pie, and there are going to be winners and losers throughout the whole process. But the question that we have been discussing and just talking about is that the most appropriate way to create the equity that she has illustrated. Your input is obviously helpful too, to ASBO as well as to Paula and the team at DOE about what you think for your district and your neighborhood that you live and work in. What do you think is appropriate?
And I would just caution, one of the biggest factors I think, and this is a personal opinion, so I'll say that right now, is property values, property taxes, local property taxes. You're taxing even those that have second homes, that live out of the state. If you do something else other than that, are we going to be able to be bringing in that type of revenue to fund schools? How do we get all of the revenue we need based on everybody, not just those that actually live and work in it, but those that have property in it? They should be contributing as well. So those are the three priorities that I have this year, yes. And I would absolutely welcome input as to how to go about trying to find a better solution.
Questions?
No, no. There has been a lot more, there has been still also, there's two other factors that have been contributing. A decline in enrollment, which not as significant this year as in past, but there has been some decline. But the other big factor that's showing this year is increase in town valuation. And so many, like I said, the state average is 6%. So many districts saw an increase, which, you know, is going to indicate, according to the formula with the way we're doing it right now, that they have a higher ability to pay. Thank you, Scott, for not saying that.
Other questions? Thank you, Paula. Thank you, Laura. Thank you, Chelsea. Really appreciate all of you spending time with us this morning, spending the time to talk to us. Any other items before today? Before we adjourn for today? I know we ran over, but I think it was important information throughout the morning. Was this helpful this morning for what we did? Did people find the topics to be appropriate and interesting or not? How about yes? Kind of? And no? Okay, thank you. Scott? Yep. Okay.
Identified as important.
Okay. Thank you. Any other topics for today? Or questions or items you want to bring up? Thank you all for coming. Have a safe weekend. Enjoy the snow.